Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we'll take a look at this water-damaged Sony Vaio VGN-X505, a €3,000 notebook from 2004, and try to repair it. This sub-notebook from 2004 has seen better days. It has water damage and only powers on for a few seconds. Even when it's powered on, the keyboard won't respond. So today we try to fix it. But first, let's have a closer look at the device. Here we can see its 10.4-inch TN panel. And here the keyboard with the track stick or track point in the middle. In profile we can see why this device was so revolutionary for its time. About 4 years before Steve Jobs would famously go on stage and pull the MacBook Air out of an envelope, the Vaio was almost as thin, 11mm on the palm rest and 22mm on the back to be exact. As a comparison, the MacBook Air was 4mm on the edges and 19mm on the thickest parts. But just as with the MacBook Air, Sony had to compromise. The notebook only features 2 USB ports, one mini VGA, one 4-pin FireWire 400, alongside a DC out for external accessories, a headphone jack, and a PCMCIA slot occupied with a Wi-Fi card by default. This card features Wi-Fi 802.11b and G. We also have an ultra-low voltage variant of the Intel Pentium M, clocked at 1.1 GHz featuring 1 core. This is accompanied by a soldered-in 512 MB of DDR RAM and a 20 GB hard drive with Windows XP on it. Now let's disassemble this bad boy. We first have to remove the 11 volts 2000 mAh battery. We then have to take out 10 tri-wing screws on the bottom, another 3 Phillips at the back and 2 more Phillips on the side to get the bottom case loose. To get to the screws on the back, we have to first remove the little feet beside the battery, followed by the hinge covers. Underneath them, we will find our last 2 screws. It appears the bottom case got scratched up, and someone actually used black marker to color the case black again. Oh, and it looks like I forgot to undo 1 screw. Now we can pry on both sides of the case to lift it up and then pull back to remove it. Now we can have our first look at the insides of the Vaio. I can sadly already see a bit of corrosion on the back of the palm rest. Here we can see our north bridge and the hard drive connected via a flex cable. These are the 512 MB of RAM, the back of the track point and the keyboard flex cable. These flex cables go to the mouse buttons and the status LEDs, for example for caps lock, disk activity and the like. This is the single speaker of the device. The ports are all connected using this flex cable. First, let's remove the hard drive. It's connected to the mainboard using a flat flex cable ending in a mini IDE port. Here we can see that Sony used the same 20 GB 1.8-inch Toshiba hard drives that were used in Apple's 4th generation of iPods. Next, let's remove the left side ports. They are again all attached to the mainboard using a large flat flex cable. The 2 USB ports also have another screw in between them that we first have to remove. Now the ports are free. But under the ports, huge amounts of corrosion and residue come to light. Not sure if you can see this, but this white stuff is also inside the ports. This might be one of the reasons the notebook turns off after a short amount of time. We'll try to fix this later, but let's first disassemble the rest of the Vaio. For this, we have to undo the screws holding in the mainboard. There also seems to be a reset button here. We will undo the large keyboard flex cable and the little flex cable coming from the track point. Followed by the one for the tiny speaker. Then we can try and lift the board up. Sadly, nothing moves. Maybe because there's another screw underneath the PCMCIA slot. Another screw later, we can finally get the PCMCIA slot out of the way and lift the motherboard up. On the other side, we can see the 1.1 GHz Pentium M accompanied by the south bridge. There is our battery connector. Let's now focus on the keyboard. 2 screws and a few clips later we can lift the keyboard up. But now there is the speaker and flex cable to the status LEDs and mouse buttons in the way. With the speaker removed, we can finally free the keyboard from its housing. Interestingly, it looks like this is a Japanese model and someone used keyboard stickers to turn it into a German keyboard. Now let's turn our attention to cleaning the corrosion out of the ports and the keyboard. For this we need some 99% IPA aka isopropyl alcohol. After laying the keyboard in a cake plate, it can be poured over with the isopropyl alcohol. I then try to press all the keys to work the IPA into all parts of the keyboard. With an old brush, I also cleaned the track point. Now we can clean the flex cable using the same brush. After that, the keyboard gets put aside to dry. It's kind of weird to see that much liquid dripping out of a keyboard. Now let's clean the corrosion of the ports. For this I also use the brush and the IPA. After some scrubbing, the corrosion seems to be gone. I also tried to scrub the bottom case underneath the ports and at the back where the display cables enter the hinge. Now, after everything is dry, the reassembly can begin. Sadly, I couldn't get all the corrosion underneath the ports cleaned up. Now let's put in the keyboard. Followed by the flex cable for the mouse buttons and status LEDs. After which we can put in the mainboard. Now the PCMCIA slot can be put in. After, of course, forgetting another screw, the mainboard can be screwed down. Then the flex cables can be connected. A few screws later, the ports can be slotted back into place. The speaker is also fixed in place. And finally, the hard drive is inserted underneath the flex cable for the ports. Now the bottom panel can be put on. At a later point in time, I might try to fix the missing paint and black marker on this panel. But for now, let the fun part of testing the notebook begin. And by fun, I mean janky. See, I've got the notebook and a few other accessories we will take a look at later, but what I don't have is a charger for it. Since I was not sure if the device could even be fixed, I didn't want to buy a charger for it only to realize it's dead and I wasted money. So, bench power supply to the rescue. The sticker on the back of the Vaio said it needed 16 volts, so I set my power supply accordingly. Now, the next problem was how to connect the power supply to the Vaio. My solution to this was not elegant but functional. I jammed a few pieces of wire into the port and connected my power supply to that. Now the moment of truth. Will it turn on? And fortunately, it actually does. It tells me Windows hasn't been shut down correctly. No wonder if the device shut off randomly before. A quick test of the arrow buttons and enter key later, we are booting into good old Windows XP. Now we have a sample of the little speaker. Horrible. But hey, we are actually booted into Windows XP. Now let's start our favorite Windows XP program, 3D Pinball. The speaker's volume was at max, which explains the horrible sound. Ah, the memories of good old Windows XP. Let's also do a quick test of the keyboard. Seems to work fine. No, I don't want to save that. So now let's try to plug in a USB thumb drive. It actually got recognized, so the USB ports seem to work again. It looks like this notebook is fixed. If you liked this video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.